Season 11 of Diablo 4 may just have been saved, and something crazy and Diablo related may happen at the Game Awards. Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and we just had the dev stream for Season 11, and it's making me change my tune on how I felt about Season 11. I wasn't too hyped for it. I thought Season 10 was going to remain the best season, but based on changes that they're making, based on the test server feedback, as well as some mysterious hype stuff going on, which we'll get to, Season 11 may actually be incredible. So there's a couple big topics that we're going to tackle today between the dev stream as well as the Game Awards stuff. So if you want to jump ahead to specific topics, you can do so with the timestamps below. But before we move on, a quick word from this video's sponsor, Incogni. It feels like every month you hear a new story about a cyber attack or data breach that results in personal info getting leaked, from passwords and email addresses to social security numbers and phone numbers. Within the last couple of months, there was a Discord data breach where even billing information got leaked. Just last month, we learned that 183 million Gmail passwords were leaked. And every time it's like, now I gotta change my password for this, I gotta change my password for that. But meanwhile, our personal data is getting collected, aggregated, and traded like a commodity. It's a lot of work for us to track down whatever unauthorized personal info about us may be out there floating around on the internet and get it taken down. That's where Incogni comes in. It's a service that seeks to protect you by removing any unauthorized trace of you from the internet. They reach out to data brokers on your behalf, request your data be removed, and deal with any pushback they get. With Incogni, you can at least feel like someone is fighting back to keep you safe. Here's my Incogni dashboard. I have 6 requests left in progress and 172 have been completed. Incogni has also added a family plan that lets you extend your coverage to up to 4 additional members, as well as an unlimited plan which introduces Incogni's custom removals feature. With that, you can point to any website where your personal info is visible, and one of Incogni's privacy agents will take care of the rest. So go to incogni.com/Rhykker and use code Rhykker to get an exclusive offer of 60% off. Incogni helps erase you from the internet. They can't steal your identity if they can't find you. Click the link below to claim your 60% off and take your personal data off the market. All right, we're gonna start with the Game Awards stuff. We have known for weeks and possibly months that the Diablo 4 dev team has been saying, watch the Game Awards. The Game Awards take place from 7:30 p.m. Eastern to 11 p.m. Eastern. And it was just revealed today, just a couple hours ago, that Diablo 4 Season 11 starts on December 11th at 11:30 p.m. Eastern. Half an hour after the Game Awards ends, or generally the Game Awards run a little bit long, so at a safe amount of time after the Game Awards end. Now, for the past 10 seasons, we've pretty much known and could predict and expect when the next season will begin, because on day 1 of a season, you can go into the battle pass and it'll tell you when that battle pass ends. And the next season would start on the same day that the previous season and battle pass would end. So from the start of season 10, we could predict that season 11 was going to begin on December 9th, because on December 9th is when the battle pass ends. But for whatever reason, Blizzard is deciding to postpone the season 2 days later to directly after the Game Awards. They've never done it on a Thursday before, and they've also never done it at 11 p.m. at night. This is actually a terrible time for everyone in the world. It is in the middle, it is like 5 in the morning in Europe. It's just a terrible time for everyone. Employees at Blizzard have to stay late for the server launch. It is the most inconvenient, awful time for all possible parties, players, devs, wherever country or region you are in. So given they're doing that, they're not doing it for frivolity, they must have a very good reason for doing so. Why postpone the season if you're not going to be revealing something at the Game Awards that is going to affect that season? It is almost as though they are withholding something that is coming to the season and only going to reveal it at the Game Awards, and then it's like, and you can experience it in half an hour when the season starts. We've all had a good reason to believe that the second expansion was going to be revealed at the Game Awards. That was a pretty safe bet. But due to a recent statue tease, which is unrelated to Diablo 4, and I'll talk more about that in a future video. But outside of that, we had an industry insider, Jez Corden, who has come out and said that, per his sources, yes, the Diablo 4 expansion will be revealed and more. So there's something outside of the expansion that will also be revealed. And I think this ties into whatever is going to be connected to Season 11, because I don't think it's going to be a stealth drop of Expansion 2. It doesn't make sense for them to just release expansion 2 without any fanfare, any build-up, right? They want their 6 months of pre-orders. It just doesn't make business sense to stealth drop an expansion. So whatever else it's going to be, it's got to be something, again, significant enough to be advertised at the Game Awards and worth postponing the entire season for. This is unprecedented for Blizzard and Diablo 4. So whatever's going on, my interest in Season 11 has immediately perked up. I'm expecting some kind of a surprise. Because at this point, if there isn't, and we're starting, I gotta start my stream and stream through the freaking night until the wee hours of the morning for nothing, a lot of people are not gonna be happy. So before we move on from that, folks, if you wanna drop your predictions in chat as to what it's gonna be, and your prediction could be a nothing burger and we're all gonna be pissed. That could be your prediction. Go put your prediction in the comments below, upvote what you think is gonna happen, and then in a week from now you can come back and say, hey, I was right, hey, I was wrong. Well, you're not gonna come back and say you were wrong, but... Because now we'll move into the discussion of the campfire chat and the changes happening from PTR, which I think are actually going to improve Season 11 based on the experience that we had on the PTR. They touched upon a number of the pain points that were brought up. I'm not going to go over everything Season 11 is doing. I did that in a previous video. Go watch that video first to know all the new features in Season 11. I'm just going to highlight the changes now, because some of the criticism or some of the... Well, I had some criticisms, but the big takeaway was Season 11 is an adjustment season. They're retooling a lot of things, and Season 11 was a big power creep. Sorry, Season 10 was a big power creep season. Season 11 is going to feel like a nerf season in comparison, and I believed for a lot of people, Season 11 would be much less fun than Season 10. So Season 11 was the first season where I was saying, I don't think this is going to be the best season of D4. Because every other season I've been like, this is shaping up to be the best season of D4 yet. And after playing Season 11 PTR, I'm like, I think Season 10 remains the best season of D4 yet. But now, based on changes they're making, again, they're addressing a number of the things that I thought was going to make the game less fun in Season 11. So first off, the masterworking changes. I was not fond of the changes to masterworking on PTR. Now they're changing that to make it something that I think is not just more fun, it's actually even arguably stronger than the old masterworking system. So quality, right? They replaced masterworking with a simple quality system that you quality up the item up to 20% quality, and it increases the base affix of the item. So armor, you just increase the armor. Weapon, you just increase the damage. So first off, quality will now go to 25. So it goes from a max of 20% increase to a max 25% increase. But that's not the exciting part. The exciting part is now it affects all affixes. Not just the base affix, and not just the non-base affix. Every affix is getting buffed now. So the previous masterworking system, right? It only buffed the non-base affixes. The revision for PTR had just the base affix. Now we're getting both. So that's why this is now even stronger. We're getting the best of both worlds. The other thing they're changing, once you would max out the quality of an item, you would get one capstone upgrade that would transform a non-greater affix into a greater affix. They're changing that the capstone now just increases, it gives a buff to the affix of 50%, independent of it being a GA. So if it's already a GA, it's going to get buffed even more. And they're still retaining the ability to re-roll that capstoned affix. So again, even more power, as opposed to being kind of robbed of power where it's like, well, if I have a 4 GA item, I'm not benefiting at all from the capstone. So yeah, previously I just found the new masterworking system more boring and less powerful. And now they made it more interesting and much more powerful. Another complaint I had was about the new toughness system, the rework. The going from the previous resistance system to the new resistance system, which is more like the D3 resistance system, which I'm not particularly fond of. I prefer the Diablo 2 / every other ARPG style. They're not changing that, but what they are doing is giving us more information with regards to the toughness stat. So that was one of my complaints about that, is just that, well, toughness is a meaningless number. I don't know what it means. I don't know how much getting more of a certain amount of resistance is worth to my toughness, and what the toughness stat even represents with regards to different difficulties. So what they're at least doing is for every torment tier, they're going to have a recommended toughness value. So it's something to aim for, where it's like, okay, if I'm going to go to, torment 2, I want to aim for that amount of toughness. That kind of replaces maxing out your armor and resistances. So we still have a target to aim for. to feel like we are tough enough. And you might ask, well, how do they come up with that number? What they aimed for was actually making us tougher than we currently would be. Because they said, even now, if you max out your armor and resistances, you could still get one-shot by stuff. So if you hit the recommended toughness that they are suggesting per Tormenteer, you ought to now be even tougher than you would be with your maxed out armor and resist on current server. They're also giving us better tooltips when we compare to items, that it'll reflect the change in toughness we can expect to get from equipping an item. Some big changes are being made to Sanctification. That was a contentious system, is a Gamba Slam system where you either brick your item or you make it a lot better or you get a kind of null result. And overall, they're making a lot of changes here that you're more likely to get a very good result or a positive result as opposed to a negative result. So specifically, the outcome of rendering your item indestructible, that is gone and being replaced with randomly getting an extra 5 to 25% quality to the item. So you can go above the 25 cap to get up to potentially 50% quality. That is a great Sanctification outcome. Even if you get the 5%, right, it's still something beneficial. People also complain about, oh, like, if I sanctify my mythic or like a good unique, there was one outcome that would re-roll an affix, and that is generally undesirable on, really good items that have specific, very desirable affixes. So they are just making it that on GA uniques as well as mythics, that is not a possible outcome. So you will not be rolling off any stats and replacing them. They also added in a bunch of offensive aspects. Apparently a lot were missing as potential outcomes of the slam. And they even said that they didn't want to spoil anything, but they added some crazy stuff in there as possible outcomes. So there should be even more crazy, powerful stuff that can happen with Sanctification. And they've also just kind of generally buffed all the Sanctification outcomes. So obviously we're not getting to test these outcomes, but in general, overall, it seems as though Sanctification is going to be much more likely to give you some degree of upgrade. The question is just, is it going to be a bit of an upgrade or a ridiculous huge upgrade? So I think people are going to be overall more hyped for Sanctification now. Getting into slightly more granular things now, the Melted Heart of Selig. It was kind of crazy OP. Well, okay, crazy OP. It was very powerful on PTR. There were some builds that would stack enormous amounts of resource. So Melted Heart of Selig is basically the new mana shield. They took the idea of the mana shield chaos perk from Season 10, and they took the useless Melted Heart of Selig and turned it into that. And so for some builds, this was an incredible toughness tool, because some builds can synergize enormous amounts of resource, and so when your mana becomes your life, that becomes really powerful. So they are reworking how the Melted Heart works. I'm not sure. The way they talk about it, it should resolve the issues of making some builds OP by having an enormous amount of resource, but it should still maintain the toughness aspect that we get out of the Melted Heart. So basically, instead of turbo boosting your mana to a ridiculous degree, what it's going to do now is just double your resource, double your max resource. But in order to compensate and not make it be much weaker, it's giving you some damage reduction on top of doubling your resource. So if you were to take 100 damage, you're not going to lose 100 resource, you're going to lose some percentage. We don't know what percentage, but they seem to insist that it's going to feel comparable in power to PTR without the consequence of giving certain builds ridiculous amounts of resource, because some builds can scale incredible damage multipliers based on how much main resource they have. So we'll have to see if Melted Heart is RIP or not going into Season 11. One thing they did was nerf the XP globe from maggots. So one thing I said about Season 11, like the most positive thing I said, was that the leveling from 1 to 60 is going to be faster than ever, more fun than ever. It sounds like they're nerfing that. So one of the reasons was that there was a divine gift that you can get that would make, in Helltide, the Duriel maggots that are being added this season drop XP globes. Those XP globes are getting nerfed. So I no longer know if the fastest way to level will remain Helltide as it was on PTR. They're also nerfing the XP you get from world bosses. So we would get a ridiculous, you would jump like 20 levels from killing a world boss on PTR. And while that sounds OP, it's really not OP to once every 3 hours do a difficult challenge and get a ton of XP. It was problematic with the summonable bosses. That was clearly something that should not happen. So Asmodan, there's 2 versions of him. You can summon him over and over and over as many times as you want, or he will come up as a world boss randomly along the rotation of world bosses every 3 hours. For most people who are speed leveling, you're going to do maybe 1 world boss throughout your journey. I don't think it's a big deal if you get a one-time super fun spike of XP, but that's getting removed, unfortunately. They're doing a pass on visual clarity. That's something that I mentioned, that with all the new enemy affixes and stuff, it could get a little bit confusing to see what's going on. So they're doing a pass on visual clarity to improve things there. They're also doing a tuning pass on crowd control that enemies are applying. So players should not be crowd controlled as often, especially at lower levels of play. They also just, at a baseline, increased the odds of getting a multi-GA item. So if you're going to drop an ancestral item, it's more likely to be multi-GA than just 1 GA. You're not more likely to get ancestrals, period, but just if an ancestral drops, the odds of it being multi-GA have increased. Also worth noting, in case you missed it, I think they spoke about this during the various Q&As, but you can now more easily hit the breakpoints of like cooldown reduction that certain builds need, because you can now get cooldown in more gear slots than you previously could. I think they're doing that with a couple different stats. Also, in case you missed it, when you start the season with the campaign skipped, all your waypoints will remain unlocked, so you don't have to get the waypoints again. They've also apparently buffed the hell out of Undercity, especially at like low levels before level 60 it allegedly is now worth doing them. So especially if you get like an XP reward Undercity, like it's definitely worth doing any Undercity whatever keys that we get whenever they drop. We'll have to see in practice, but that's what they're saying. It also sounds like now we're just getting 12 extra Paragon points. So as part of the season rank system, where we are now earning all the skill points and Paragon points that we previously unlocked permanently via the Renown system, right now we're earning those back through the season rank system, which is more fun that way. But also on top of that, we're getting an additional 12 Paragon points more than we ever got to earn through the season ranks, unless I'm misunderstanding that. And they've moved more rewards onto the capstones. Those capstones, which again I think are a great system, you are now going to get a bigger power spike from completing a capstone, because you're going to get more skill points or Paragon points or what have you. They've also added cosmetic goodies to the season ranks. It's not just the one at the end. So there's, this was not on PTR, but there's apparently multiple cosmetics that we can earn via the season rank system. And the final thing to chase, which is really for people that are looking for more stuff to do in a season, is how they framed it, is some kind of like golden laurel or gilded laurel. It sounds like it's similar to the portrait system in Diablo 3, so you're gonna have some kind of like gilded portrait frame. And this is account-wide, but seasonal only. So when the season ends, next season you'll have to earn it again. But basically when you get it, you can show off your sexy golden portrait. It's intended as a new chase item. Talking about player feedback they got, they're very well aware that Chaos Armor was like one of their most successful systems and people love it, and they are using the learnings there to inform future systems. So while they're not bringing back Chaos Armor exactly, they understand that we love it and they're going to see what they can do in the future to give us similar stuff. They're also aware that people really enjoyed not being locked in Lair Boss Jail, so they're trying to find new ways to allow us to farm things, which is kind of why we have the entire Season 11 theme of being able to buff and juice our different activities so that we can get different rewards from different things. Now, one surprise was that the tower, the leaderboard activity, is not launching with the season, but it's going to come in January with patch 252. And I'm assuming this is so that, first week of a season, there's all the broken builds, right? So they want to patch out the broken builds so that the tower isn't just immediately scuffed. On the topic of fishing and the tower, right? Fishing was a big thing in Diablo 3 Greater Rifts. What fishing means in the context of a Diablo game is not getting a fishing pole at a pond. Fishing as in you keep trying and trying and trying, you keep opening and opening and opening different tower levels until you get a favorable one, and that's the one that you run in order to try to top the leaderboard. So this is how all top leaderboard clears happen in Diablo 3. People would fish 50 to 100 maps before finding a good, like the perfect map to run for competitive purposes. And there's different ways to try to address fishing and stop it from being a thing. And one of those ways is like a lever penalty, where like you're somehow penalized for not running a certain map. They say they don't want to do that. They don't want to force you to like finish a run that you're on if your luck has turned bad or if you're failing. So they want to seek to address fishing more from a design standpoint, where they just want to reduce the number of negative outcomes. All kinds of like outliers, like bad maps, bad bosses, bad monsters, bad layouts, bad RNG. They want to reduce that as much as possible, just so that there are fewer maps that you would want to skip. And I think that's actually a really good approach to take. They also said that they've heard that people are saying, yes, the pit and the tower are very similar. So they really want, now that each of these game modes exists, because previously the pit was kind of serving the purpose of the tower while also having an in-game purpose of powering you up. But now that they have a separate leaderboard activity, they can better differentiate these two things. So going forward, I think we can expect to see over time more changes made that are going to make these two activities branch off in wildly different directions. And may I recommend for the pit to add insane RNG. Maybe sometimes you get a 10 level pit. Maybe sometimes you get an infinite level pit, right? Just have all kinds of crazy outcomes. Visions of Enmity from Diablo 3 is a great example of just crazy things that can happen. Maybe sometimes it's a pit that's just a goblin level. And they ended the dev live stream by stressing the importance and repeating multiple times the importance of watching the Game Awards. So folks, I'm getting hype again. I don't know if I'm setting myself up for disappointment. I hope not. What do you folks think? What do you think is going to happen? How are you feeling about Season 11 right now? Sound off in the comments. Am I high on copium? I generally am. I know it. I know. But that's going to wrap up this video, folks. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed it, leave a thumbs up and subscribe to join Rhykkers Raiders for more Diablo content.